Well, welcome ladies and gents. It would seem that HBO Max has like a horror series in the works of Scanners, which is surprising, I think, for a few reasons, but also not surprising for a few others. So let's just kind of get into the details first, and then I'll give you my opinion on, I guess, a trend that is fairly apparent now. So they say that it's a Scanners HBO series in the works from Lovecraft Country director Jan Demange. Important to note, that's just one of the directors. It's not an individual that wrote it or anything like that, if that is a cause for concern. Although I know a lot of people actually enjoyed Lovecraft Country. So, obviously, David Cronenberg did Scanners, right? Fantastic movie. Very 80s, of course. Sorry, I just smashed my microphone. Very 80s, of course. But it's a good film. You know, it's definitely of its time. And this is important to note here. This is just in development at this point in time for HBO. And the director, Jan Demange, is just on board as a director. We don't know whether that's going to be sort of lead director for the whole series, pilot episode director, which will set the tone, or maybe indeed then go on to be showrunner. We just don't know at this point in time. It's not 100%. But what we do know, right, is we've got the Emmy Award-winning Black Mirror scribe William Bridges on board. That's great. All right, they're writer and showrunner. Okay, so, you know, in terms of Jan Demange, they're in director's chair. It doesn't state how many, so that's important to note. They don't. It could be just the one. It could be all of them. We don't know. And then both individuals, so this is, you know, Jan Demange is essentially on board as a showrunner to some degree because they're executive producing along with William Bridges. But I think what's the best news here is someone who has, you know, written Black Mirror is on board as the writer and showrunner for Scanners series. Now, I think if you've got two things which I think could definitely coincide quite well with one another, Scanners and Black Mirror, quite well. There's definitely like a sort of themes running through them which could blend quite nicely, or at least one lends itself nicer. You know, Black Mirror lends itself to Scanners being positive, I think. I think. So, for those that don't know, the original film, a bunch of people, powerful psychic abilities, they were Scanners, led by Revok, leader, wanted to use the abilities to control the entire world, and then we had another individual with psychic abilities, Cameron Vale, who was opposed to all of that. So, you know, it was like a good versus evil with psychic powers, I guess. But it was interesting because, you know, they'd sort of like explode basically. I remember the head exploding scene. It was just brutal, and they even mention it here in the article. You know, the movie features the now iconic head exploding scene, which Revok uses his powers to obliterate a man's cranium. And I mean, it is really, yeah, I remember that scene. As a sprog and a kid, and it was brutal. It was really, really brutal. Now, it sounds like the series may actually serve as a follow-up, so that's interesting. It's described as a visceral thriller set in the mind-bending world of Cronenberg's film. So it's in the same world, supposedly. It will focus on two women living on the fringes of modern society who are pursued by relentless agents with unimaginable powers and thus must learn to work together to topple a vast conspiracy determined to bring them to heel. So I guess, like, you know, a few people will probably instantly go, oh, it's focusing on women, wham, and blah, blah, blah. I think with most shows that get released today, there is always that sort of air of, they've just gender bent it, or they've just swapped it all out. Now, I don't have any issue with female-led series, movies, anything like that. I don't care. It's all fine. But when the market is overloaded with it, it can become quite samey. And I'm sure people will probably laugh at that and go, well, that's a bit hypocritical. It's the same with guys, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. As a guy, we like what we like, right? We respond to similar things. A woman running around struggling and performing special abilities or powers is believable up to a point. And like I say, when the market is entirely swamped with it, which it kind of is at the moment, it does get a bit boring, a bit mundane, a bit samely. So that's, I guess, a bit of an irritant to women. But not hugely. Like, this will be like a wait and see kind of situation. We'll just kind of see what happens. But it's interesting as well. We've got Cronenberg on as executive producer. That will only be because he owns it. It's his. He owns the rights to, I would imagine, etc. So that's probably why he's on board. It's unlikely he'll be on board as a creative head. We've got Michael Ellenberg and Lindsay Springer of Media Res Studio and Meredith Duff of Wayward Films. I think, I like Cronenberg. Cronenberg's done some amazing things. I really, really, really deeply disliked Crimes of the Future, the new one. I had a massive distaste for that. I really was not a fan. And the fact that they didn't change anything from a script that was like 20 to 30 years old, I mean, I think it says a lot. It says a lot about laziness. They just want to push it out, try and capitalise on stuff with very little work. So I don't really care whether Cronenberg's on board for this or not, excuse me. I think this will probably be better without his touch, and rather someone following on and, a bit of an homage to a degree, which I know is probably sacrosanct to hear, sacrilege to hear for a few people, but I stand by that. I think that's absolutely fine to say. So what do you guys think? Scanners, HBO series. I think it's important to note as well that actually, believe it or not, it was Amazon. I know Amazon's been copping a lot of flack for Rings of Power, but it was actually Amazon that have been leading the way on these kind of things to a certain degree, because Amazon had greenlit an Event Horizon series. We've had no information on that yet at all. It's just kind of been sat there languishing. But they greenlit that. And then we had the HBO Hellraiser series greenlit as well, which is just... I don't know if it's dead in the water. We've not heard anything about it. But what I will say with respect to HBO is don't expect anything coming anytime soon. I mean, this is just... it's in development. The Hellraiser series has been in development for like 2 years now. We're not closer to getting anything. So, that's not the Hellraiser movie that's being released. It's not linked to that, completely different. So let me know what you guys think. I'd be keen to hear it. Cheers. Take care.